A homeless father and his young son, struggling to survive on the streets, suddenly inherit a mysterious island from the father who once abandoned him. But what waits for them there isn't a second chance, it's a buried secret powerful enough to destroy everything. Subscribe for more powerful stories and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. On a bitter winter night in Chicago, when the wind howled like it had something to prove, a man named Benjamin Carter sat curled beneath the flickering neon glow of a closed diner. He wasn't always like this. Once, he had a steady job fixing HVAC systems, a small apartment, and dreams that felt within reach. But life has a way of unraveling a man thread by thread until there's nothing left but survival. Beside him, wrapped in an oversized coat that swallowed his tiny frame, was his 9-year-old son, Eli. The boy's breath came out in faint white clouds, his small hands trembling despite Benjamin's best efforts to keep him warm. Benjamin pulled him closer, pressing his chin against Eli's head, as if he could shield him from the cold and from the world itself. "Dad, are we staying here tonight?" Eli whispered, his voice barely louder than the wind. Benjamin forced a smile. He didn't feel, "Just for a little while. Buddy, we'll find somewhere better soon." But deep down, he wasn't sure that was true. Then, just as the night felt like it couldn't get any colder, a black car rolled to a stop in front of them. And everything was about to change. The man who stepped out of the car didn't belong to Benjamin's world. Not anymore. His shoes didn't sink into the slush. His coat, long, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, looked like it had never known the touch of dirt or desperation. He walked with the kind of calm precision that only came from a life where nothing was ever uncertain. Benjamin felt his entire body tense. Instinct. Out here, on the streets, you learn fast men like that don't stop for people like you, unless something's wrong. He pulled Eli a little closer. "Stay behind me," he murmured under his breath. The man stopped just a few feet away, his sharp eyes studying Benjamin like he already knew everything about him, every mistake, every failure, every scar that wasn't visible on the surface. "Benjamin Carter," the man asked. His voice was smooth, controlled, no pity in it. Benjamin's jaw tightened. Depends who's asking. For a moment, the wind howled between them, carrying the distant sounds of traffic and sirens. Then the man reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Thick, cream-colored, sealed with a deep crimson wax stamp. Benjamin's breath caught in his throat the second he saw it. He knew that seal. God, he knew it. "My name is Victor Langford," the man said. "I represent the law firm of Langford, Pierce and Whitmore. I've been trying to locate you for nearly 3 weeks. Benjamin didn't take the envelope. Couldn't, because if he did, it would make this real. "I don't want anything from him," Benjamin said, his voice low, rough. "You can go back and tell him that." There was a pause, a long one. "And then?" "I'm afraid that won't be possible." Benjamin's eyes snapped up. "Your father," Langford continued, his tone softening just slightly. "Alexander Carter passed away 4 days ago." For a second, the world didn't move, didn't breathe. Nothing. Benjamin just stood there, staring at him, as if the words hadn't quite reached him yet. Dead? The man who had thrown him out at 18. The man who told him he'd never amount to anything. The man who built an empire while his own son froze on the streets. Dead. Eli shifted beside him. "Dad." Benjamin swallowed hard, forcing himself back into the moment. "What does that have to do with me?" he asked, his voice quieter now, but sharper. Langford extended the envelope toward him again. "You are required to attend the reading of his will tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. A car will be sent to collect you." Benjamin let out a bitter laugh. "Required," he repeated. "That sounds about right. Even from the grave, his father still giving orders." For a moment, he thought about walking away, just turning his back on it, on all of it. But then, he felt Eli's hand tighten around his. Small, cold, trusting. And suddenly, this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about survival. Slowly, reluctantly, Benjamin reached out and took the envelope. It felt heavy. Too heavy. Like it carried more than just paper inside. Langford gave a small nod, as if a deal had just been sealed. "Be ready," he said. "You won't want to miss this." Then he turned, stepping back into the black car. Within seconds, it disappeared into the night, leaving nothing behind but exhaust smoke and silence. Benjamin stood there for a long time, staring down at the envelope in his hands. Eli looked up at him. "What is it, Dad?" Benjamin hesitated. Then he exhaled slowly. "I think," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "everything's about to change." That night, neither of them slept. The wind rattled the city. The cold crept into their bones. And somewhere deep inside, Benjamin felt it. That quiet, uneasy feeling, like the past he had tried so hard to escape, had finally come back to find him. The next morning didn't feel real. It felt staged, like Benjamin and Eli had somehow stepped into someone else's life. The car that arrived for them wasn't just clean. It was flawless. Black leather seats. Warm air flowing gently through hidden vents. The kind of quiet that made you aware of every breath you took. Eli sat beside him, wide-eyed, his small fingers tracing the stitching on the seat. "Dad, is this ours?" he whispered. Benjamin swallowed, staring out the window as the gray streets of Chicago slowly gave way to something cleaner, quieter. "No, buddy," he said softly. "It's just for today." But even as he said it, something deep in his chest tightened. Because nothing about this felt temporary. The law office was everything Benjamin expected and everything he hated. Polished marble floors, dark wood walls, people who looked at him like he didn't belong there. Because he didn't. Eli stayed close, his small hand gripping Benjamin's coat as if letting go would make all of this disappear. They were led into a large conference room where a man in his 60s sat waiting behind a long glass table. Silver hair, perfect posture, eyes that didn't miss anything. "Mr. Carter," he said, standing. "I'm Harold Whitmore, senior partner." Benjamin didn't shake his hand. "Let's skip the formalities," he muttered. "What did he leave me?" Whitmore studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well." He opened a folder. "Your father, Alexander Carter, owned extensive assets, commercial real estate, offshore accounts, and investments across multiple continents." Benjamin felt nothing. Those words didn't belong to his life. They never had. "Just say the number," he said. Whitmore adjusted his glasses. "The total estate is valued at approximately $620 million. The room went silent. Eli blinked. "Dad, is that a lot?" Benjamin let out a hollow laugh. I think so, buddy." But the number didn't feel real. It felt like something you'd hear in a movie, not something tied to your name. Then Whitmore added quietly, "However, there is a condition." "Of course there is." Benjamin leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. "Yeah," he said, "there always is." Whitmore slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs. An island, dark, isolated, surrounded by restless gray water. At the top of a jagged cliff stood a massive stone mansion, more fortress than home. Benjamin frowned. "What is this?" "Your inheritance," Whitmore replied. "Black Hollow Isle, located off the coast of Oregon." Benjamin's stomach tightened. "Let me guess," he said slowly. "I have to live there." "For 6 months," Whitmore confirmed. "Uninterrupted." Eli looked up at him. "Dad, Are we moving to an island? Benjamin didn't answer right away, because in his mind, he was already doing the math. 6 months, warm beds, food, safety, or back to the streets, back to the cold, back to watching his son shiver every night. If you leave the island for more than 48 hours, Whitmore continued, the inheritance is forfeited. Benjamin let out a slow breath. Even dead, his father was still controlling him, still testing him, still pulling the strings. He looked down at Eli, at his tired eyes, his thin frame, the way he tried so hard not to complain, and something inside Benjamin broke. Just a little. Is there food there? Eli asked quietly. Whitmore nodded. Fully stocked, self-sustaining. Eli's voice dropped to a whisper. Then, can we go? Benjamin closed his eyes for a moment. Just one moment. Then he nodded. Yeah, he said, his voice firm now. We'll go. 2 weeks later, they were standing on the deck of a small boat cutting through the cold Pacific waters. The sky was heavy, the ocean restless. Eli clung to the railing, his face pale from the motion. Almost there, the captain muttered, barely looking at them. Benjamin followed his gaze. And that's when he saw it. Black Hollow Isle, rising from the mist like something that didn't want to be found. The trees were twisted, dark, the cliffs sharp like broken teeth. And at the top, that house, watching them, waiting. Eli grabbed his arm. Dad. Benjamin didn't answer, because for the first time since this all began, he didn't feel lucky. He didn't feel hopeful. He felt something else, something colder than the ocean wind, like they weren't arriving somewhere new, but stepping into something that had been waiting for them, for a long, long time. And deep down, Benjamin knew. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a secret, one his father had buried, and somehow, he had just handed it to them. The first night on Black Hollow Isle didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like a warning. The wind didn't just blow, it screamed against the stone walls of the mansion, rattling the tall windows like something outside was trying to get in, or something inside was trying to get out. Benjamin barely slept. He lay awake in the massive, unfamiliar bedroom, staring at the ceiling while Eli slept beside him, curled up under layers of blankets that were warmer than anything they'd had in years. It should have felt like a blessing. A real bed, a locked door, a roof that didn't leak. But instead, it felt wrong. Too easy. Too quiet. The next morning, Benjamin woke early. Years on the streets had trained his body that way. Survival didn't allow for comfort. He moved quietly, careful not to wake Eli, and made his way downstairs. The house felt different in daylight. Still beautiful, still massive. But now he could see it clearly. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Every hallway too long, every door too heavy, every window placed just high enough to remind you weren't meant to escape easily. Benjamin ran his hand along the wall as he walked. Cold stone. Solid. Permanent. Like the man who built it. He found the study at the end of a long corridor, and somehow he knew it would be there. Like the house itself was guiding him. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, everything was untouched. A large wooden desk, shelves lined with books, and above the fireplace, a portrait. Alexander Carter. Benjamin froze. The man in the painting looked exactly the same. Sharp features, cold eyes. That same expression Benjamin had spent his whole life trying to forget. Judgment, disappointment, control. You're still trying to run things, aren't you? Benjamin muttered under his breath. His voice sounded small in the room. Like it didn't belong. He stepped closer to the desk. There was only one thing on it. A leather-bound journal. Benjamin hesitated before opening it, because something in his gut already told him. This wasn't going to be simple. The handwriting inside wasn't neat. It wasn't controlled. It was frantic. Messy? Desperate. Benjamin frowned as he flipped through the pages. This wasn't the man he knew. This was someone afraid. He stopped at the final entry, dated just a week before his father's death. Benjamin read slowly, and with every word, something inside him shifted. They're watching. They always have been. The money was never the real prize. The information is, I took it from them years ago, and now they want it back. This island, it was supposed to protect me. But it's become a cage. If you're reading this, don't trust anyone. Not the firm, not the mainland. The truth is buried beneath this house. Benjamin's grip tightened on the journal. Beneath the house. His heart began to pound. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't even about inheritance anymore. This was something else entirely. Something dangerous. A soft voice broke the silence. "Dad!" Benjamin turned. Eli stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "You okay?" the boy asked. Benjamin forced a small smile. "Yeah, buddy. Just looking around." Eli stepped into the room, glancing up at the portrait. "Is that Grandpa?" Benjamin nodded slowly. Eli studied the painting for a moment, then frowned. "He looks mean." Benjamin let out a quiet breath. "Yeah, he said he was—" For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eli asked something that hit deeper than anything else. "Why did he leave us this place?" Benjamin looked down at the journal in his hands, at the frantic words, at the fear hidden between the lines. And suddenly, he understood. This wasn't a gift. It never was. It was a setup. A trap. His father hadn't brought him here to help him. He had brought him here to replace him. To sit in the same cage. To guard the same secret. To take the same risk. Benjamin knelt down in front of Eli, placing both hands on his shoulders. "Listen to me," he said quietly. His voice wasn't soft anymore. It was steady. Focused. Different. "We're not here because we're lucky," he continued. "We're here because your grandfather was hiding something, and now it's our problem." Eli's eyes widened slightly. "Are we in trouble?" Benjamin hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe." A small pause. "But I'm not going to let anything happen to you." And for the first time since they arrived, Benjamin wasn't thinking like a man who had been given a second chance. He was thinking like a man who had walked into a storm and finally understood. He wasn't here to inherit a fortune. He was here to survive it. The house didn't feel as quiet anymore. Once you know a place is hiding something, silence stops feeling peaceful. It starts feeling like it's watching you. Benjamin didn't tell Eli everything. Not yet. A child shouldn't have to carry that kind of weight. But he didn't lie either. "We're going to explore a little," he said that afternoon, keeping his voice calm. "Stay close to me." "All right." Eli nodded, gripping his hand tighter than usual. "I don't like this place," he whispered. Benjamin looked down at him. "Me neither," he admitted. And somehow, that honesty made Eli trust him even more. They started in the kitchen, then the hallways, then the lower level. Benjamin moved slowly, carefully, like a man walking through unfamiliar territory, because that's exactly what this was. Every step mattered. Every sound mattered. Every shadow felt like it meant something. The basement door was easy to miss, hidden behind what looked like a storage wall. Benjamin only noticed it because the floor beneath his feet felt different. "Hollow!" He crouched down, running his fingers along the edge. There it was. A seam. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. Eli didn't argue. The door opened with a heavy groan, and the air that came out was colder, damp, like it had been sealed away for years. They stepped inside. The stairs were narrow, made of rough concrete, descending into darkness. Benjamin reached for the light switch. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a flicker, a buzz, and the basement came alive. It wasn't what he expected. Not old, Not broken. Not abandoned. It was modern. Machines lined the walls, generators, filtration systems, heavy steel equipment that looked like it belonged in a facility. Not a home? Eli's voice echoed softly. Dad, what is all this? Benjamin shook his head slowly. I don't know. But deep down, he was starting to... Then came the sound. A low, rhythmic thud. Thud, thud, thud. Eli froze. Dad! Benjamin's heart started racing. He grabbed a metal rod from the corner, gripping it tightly. Stay right behind me, he whispered. They followed the sound, step by step. Deeper into the basement. The noise grew louder. Closer. Thud, thud, thud. Until finally, they reached it. A large industrial pump, vibrating violently against its pipes. Benjamin let out a breath. Relief. It's just a machine, he said, lowering the rod. But as he stepped around it, his foot caught on something. A track, embedded in the concrete. He frowned. Followed it, all the way to the far wall. At first, it looked solid, just another part of the foundation. But then he saw it. A small panel. Loose! Slightly open. Benjamin pulled it aside. And there it was. A keypad. Hidden. Waiting. His father's words echoed in his mind. The truth is buried beneath this house. Benjamin stared at the numbers, his pulse quickening. Eli's voice trembled behind him. Dad, what is that? Benjamin didn't answer. Because in that moment, he wasn't just a father anymore. He was a man standing at the edge of something dangerous. Something that could change everything. He tried a few numbers. Nothing. Error. Again. Error. He exhaled slowly. Think. What would his father choose? Not something random. Something meaningful. Something personal. And then it hit him. Not his father's life. Not his success. But the one thing he always tried to control. Benjamin? With steady hands, he typed in his own birth date. A long pause. A quiet hum. And then, a deep mechanical sound echoed through the basement. The wall moved. Slowly, heavily, revealing a dark space beyond. Eli gasped softly. Dad. Benjamin stepped forward, reached for the light switch inside, clicked it on, and everything changed. The room wasn't small. It was massive. A hidden vault. Shelves lined with silver bars. Stacks of sealed documents. Files. Hundreds of them. Neatly organized. Carefully preserved. Like someone had been protecting them or hiding them. Benjamin walked to the center table. Picked up a file. Opened it. And as his eyes moved across the page, his expression changed. Confusion. Then realization. Then something deeper. Something heavier. This wasn't just money. This wasn't just business. This was evidence. Records. Transactions. Names. Powerful names. Dangerous names. Benjamin slowly lowered the file, his hands trembling. His father hadn't built a fortune. He had built a secret. One big enough to get people killed. Eli tugged on his sleeve. Dad, what is it? Benjamin looked down at him, and for the first time since they arrived, he knew exactly what this was. Not just a trap. Not just a burden. It was an opportunity. A dangerous one, but a real one. He knelt down, placing both hands on Eli's shoulders, his voice steady. Serious. Different. We're going to be okay, he said. Eli searched his face. Are you sure? Benjamin nodded slowly. No, he admitted, but I'm going to make it that way. Because for the first time in his life, Benjamin Carter wasn't just surviving. He had leverage. He had truth. He had something the world would pay attention to. And maybe, just maybe, this cursed place wasn't the end of their story. That night, something inside Benjamin Carter changed. Not suddenly. Not loudly. but deeply, like a quiet shift in the foundation of who he was. For years, Benjamin had lived one way, reacting to cold nights, to empty stomachs, to the way the world pushed him down over and over again. Survival had been his only skill. But now, for the first time in a long time, he wasn't reacting. He was thinking, planning, becoming something else. He stood alone in the study, the leather journal in one hand, one of the files from the vault in the other. The fire in the fireplace crackled softly, casting shadows across the walls. Eli was upstairs, finally asleep. Safe. For now. Benjamin looked down at the documents again. Names. Accounts. Transactions. This wasn't just evidence. This was power. The kind of power his father had built his entire life around. The kind of power that had destroyed everything in the process. Benjamin clenched his jaw. "I'm not you," he muttered under his breath. But even as he said it, he knew something uncomfortable. He was starting to understand him. A soft creak echoed through the house. Benjamin froze. Then, footsteps. Not Eli. Too heavy. Too deliberate. Benjamin moved instantly. No hesitation. No panic. Just action. He killed the lights. The room dropped into darkness. His breathing slowed. Controlled. Focused. Another sound. A faint metallic click. Then, somewhere in the distance, a door. Opening! They weren't alone. Benjamin's mind raced, but his body stayed calm. Years on the streets had taught him one thing better than anything else. When danger comes, you don't freeze. You adapt. He moved quickly to the window, peering out into the darkness. At first, he saw nothing. Then, a flicker of movement near the dock. A boat. Black. Low. Not the supply boat. Not the captain. Something else. His chest tightened. They found it! Or they found him. Benjamin turned and moved silently through the hallway, every step placed carefully. He reached Eli's room and slipped inside. The boy stirred slightly. "Dad," Eli whispered, half asleep. Benjamin knelt beside him, his voice low but firm. Hey, buddy. I need you to listen to me, okay?" Eli blinked, confusion slowly turning into fear. "What's wrong?" Benjamin placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember when I told you we might be in trouble?" Eli nodded slowly. "It's here," Benjamin said. For a brief moment, fear filled the boy's eyes. But Benjamin didn't look away, didn't soften it, because lies wouldn't protect him. Truth would. "We're going to play a game," Benjamin continued. "A quiet game. You have to hide. No matter what you hear, you stay hidden. You don't come out until I come get you." "Okay." Eli's voice trembled. "Are you coming back?" Benjamin paused. Just for a second. Then he nodded. "I always do." He led Eli to a narrow closet, pushing aside a panel he had noticed earlier. A hidden crawl space? Small. Dark. Safe. "For now," Benjamin said. Eli crawled inside, turning back one last time. "I love you, Dad." Benjamin's throat tightened. "I love you more." Then he closed the panel, and just like that, everything changed. Benjamin stood alone in the hallway. No coat, no shelter, no safety net, just him. And whatever was coming through that door, he walked back toward the main staircase, his movements slower now. Intentional, controlled. This wasn't fear. This was focus. The front door exploded open. The sound echoed through the entire house like thunder. Boots hit the floor. Heavy, measured, professional. Voices followed. Low, cold, not rushed, not nervous. These weren't amateurs. Benjamin stepped back into the shadows, his breathing steady. Watching, waiting. One of the men spoke. "Spread out." Another replied, "He's here." Benjamin closed his eyes for a brief moment. Not in fear, but in clarity. This was it. The moment where everything he had been was no longer enough. When he opened his eyes again, there was something different in them. Something harder. Sharper. He wasn't just a father trying to survive anymore. He was a man protecting something. Someone. And that changes everything. He moved quietly toward the kitchen, grabbing whatever he could find. Not weapons. Tools. Things he understood. Things he could use. Because Benjamin Carter didn't have training. Didn't have backup. Didn't have weapons. But he had something else. Something far more dangerous. He had nothing left to lose. And when a man reaches that point, when fear no longer controls him, when survival turns into purpose, he becomes something else entirely. Benjamin looked toward the hallway where the men were searching. Then back toward the hidden walls of the house. Then toward the darkness. And for the first time since this all began, he didn't feel like prey. He felt like the storm. The storm didn't stop that night. It raged. Wind slammed against the walls of the mansion like it wanted to tear the place apart. Rain lashing the windows in relentless waves. But inside, something far more violent had already happened. It ended faster than Benjamin expected. Not because he was stronger. Not because he was faster. But because he was willing. Willing to do what needed to be done. Willing to outthink them. Willing to survive. The last man fell in the grand foyer. The echo of it lingered in the air long after the sound itself had died. Benjamin stood there, chest rising and falling, his hands shaking not from fear, but from everything that had just passed through him. Silence returned. Heavy, unforgiving, final. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't think, didn't feel, just stood there. And then,
"Dad!"
The voice came from upstairs. Small, fragile, alive. Benjamin turned instantly. All the hardness in him, the fight, the survival, the cold precision. It broke. Just like that, he ran. Up the stairs, down the hallway, to the hidden panel. His hands fumbled slightly as he pulled it open. And there, curled in the darkness, was Eli, tears streaking his face, eyes wide with fear. But alive. Benjamin pulled him into his arms without a word. Held him tight. Too tight. Like if he let go, the world might take him again. I thought. Eli's voice broke. I thought you weren't coming back. Benjamin closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against his son's. I told you, he whispered, his voice shaking now, finally human again. I always come back. They stayed like that for a while. No storm, no danger, no past. Just a father. And his son. Morning came slowly, gray light stretching across the island, revealing everything. The broken doors, the shattered glass, the truth. Benjamin didn't run. He didn't hide. He didn't pretend nothing had happened. Because this time, he wasn't that man anymore. He found the satellite phone, the one the intruders had brought, and he made a call. Not to the police. Not at first. To the people who could end this. For good. My name is Benjamin Carter, he said when the line finally connected. His voice was steady, clear, unshaken. I have information about something bigger than you think. What followed changed everything. Within hours, the island was no longer silent. Helicopters cut through the sky. Boats surrounded the shoreline. Men in uniforms moved through the house with precision, taking control, taking evidence, taking the truth that had been buried for decades, and bringing it into the light. Benjamin stood on the edge of it all, Eli beside him, holding his hand. Watching, waiting, breathing. One of the agents approached him. You did the right thing, he said. Benjamin looked out at the ocean, at the storm that was finally beginning to fade. Yeah, he replied quietly, I just wish it didn't have to be like this. The investigation moved fast. Faster than Benjamin expected. Because what his father had hidden was bigger than anyone imagined. Money. Power. Corruption. Names that mattered. People who thought they were untouchable. But not anymore. Benjamin didn't keep the secret. He didn't protect it. He didn't become his father. He exposed it. Every piece of it. And in doing so, he didn't just change his life. He changed everything that secret touched. Weeks later, the island felt different. Lighter. Quieter. Not because it had changed, but because the truth had been taken out of it. Benjamin stood outside the mansion, Eli beside him. The boy looked up. Are we staying here? Benjamin shook his head slowly. No, he said. We're not. Eli smiled faintly. Good. Benjamin let out a soft breath. For the first time, it felt like they had a choice. They left the island behind. Not as victims, not as survivors, but as something else. As people who had faced the past and refused to carry it forward. Months later, in a quiet neighborhood far from the ocean, Benjamin stood in a small kitchen, sunlight pouring through the window. Eli laughed outside. Running. Free. Safe. Benjamin held a cup of coffee in his hands. Warm. Simple. Real. No more cold nights. No more fear. No more running. Just peace. He looked out the window at his son, and for a moment, everything that had happened, the streets, the island, the danger, it all felt distant, like a story someone else had lived. But he knew the truth. He carried it with him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that sometimes the hardest paths don't lead you to comfort. They lead you to clarity. Benjamin Carter didn't inherit a fortune. Not really. He inherited a choice, and for the first time in his life, he chose something different. Benjamin didn't inherit a gift, he inherited a burden. But what made him different was his choice. He could have kept the secret. He could have become like his father. But instead, he chose to break the cycle. Because true strength isn't about money or power. It's about choosing who you become, even when your past tries to decide for you. Sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't what you receive. It's what you refuse to carry forward. We all carry something from the past, pain, failure, or doubt. But like Benjamin, you have a choice. Let it define you, or use it to grow. You don't need a second chance handed to you. You just need the courage to create one. If this story meant something to you, like and share it. Subscribe for more powerful stories. Comment below, what would you have done?